Hey everybody, Elsie Rosie here, and welcome to the O-Ship Show. So on today's episode, we are actually doing a special thing where essentially, because this video is so long, we are going to be able to make it two-part video. So we're having, oh my goodness. So this is just the first part of Books with Tea with me and Chris. So let's dive right in to see and celebrate Books with Tea. Let's get started. Back again so soon, we've all been preparing for you. Another fight, another scream, another broken, rotten dream. Welcome back. Oh, hey everybody! Hi everybody, welcome back! Guys, that was actually a song written by Try Hard Ninja. Welcome back. It's definitely one of my favorite Five Nights at Freddy's songs, so I thought it'd be fun for us to start the video with it. So please excuse my voice. I'm not the best singer. I think I'm pretty awesome, but also I'm no opera singer. But yeah, so guys, on today's episode, we are going through Five Nights at Freddy's Silver Eyes. Because if y'all saw in the earlier video, there are a ton of FNAF books. Like, a ton. There are 12 in total. I do not have all of them yet. I would love to someday, and someday I will go through all of them. But today, we are just going through Five Nights at Freddy's Silver Eyes. I'll have the graphic novel, and Chris will be using the book. So guys, I'm really excited to get into this. I also want to do some fun history about these books, because this book is a lot of fun. It is the first Five Nights at Freddy's novel. And of course, because it's connected to Five Nights at Freddy's, that means our timing and dates are going to be very confusing to understand. I say that because when I was looking into this and researching when this book came out, I got so many different dates. I got April 2015, I got October 2015, 2016, and then I checked on Amazon, and Amazon said that it came out September 27th, 2016. I'm like, when did you come out? And like, if we look into my book, like you actually, like you can, fun fact, y'all can look into your book and figure out when it was written. So my book came out 2016. So when did you come out? Thing is, that could just mean when the book was printed. So now I'm just like, ah. So we know, as in tradition in FNAF, we know the rough timeline of things, but not the quite exact timing, and that's completely okay. I didn't even actually know that we had a graphic novel, Silver Eyes, until January 2020. I gotta admit, I remember that day so vividly. I was home for a little bit from between semesters, and my mom was like, yeah, we're gonna go into Barnes & Noble. You can pick one book. I'm like, hell yeah. So I zoomed to the back to the fandom section, you know, like they hide it in the corner. You guys see all the fandom books. This is where all the video game books are, the pop dolls, all that fun jazz. And I'm like, this is my home. And I go down, and at that point, the Silver Eyes was out, Twisted Ones was out, and I think the Fourth Closet was too, or like it was about to. And I'm like, look at this. So I'm looking at the books, and I think one of the Freddy files is out too. So I was just like looking through it, and I'm like, this is so cool. But then, as I'm looking through the books, and I see Silver Eyes and Silver Eyes again. And I'm like, the fuck? So I grabbed it, and I was like, oh! I literally almost cried. So guys, if you guys, I want to tell you a big dream that I have. Someday I would love to produce my own graphic novels just like this, because I love stories being told like this. I think it's a great way for people to read. I think there's so much more storytelling to it. Especially, I'm more of a visual person, so visual art is much easier for me to comprehend than the books. Because books are great because when the people don't give super vivid descriptions, you're able to kind of create a world around it. You don't really need the pictures. But with the graphic novel, I'm actually going to show you guys a page from it from the Silver Eyes graphic novel, 72 to 73. And look, to spoiler for the book, so don't look if you guys are spoiler. But we can see the scene where Charlie and her brother Sammy, or Charlotte and Sammy, get kidnapped by the yellow bunny, who is just such a cool scene, and it builds up the tension, especially because we start with Charlie looking back at the scene, and then we flip back to her tiny little hand touching the costumes. it was just such a cool thing. And I sat in the back of that pop culture section. I was just like, I was literally, I swear, I almost started crying. Also, I fucking screamed when I saw this version of Purple Guy, because look at this little motherfucker. This creepy asshole. Motherfucker. I was freaking out. I was so excited. I clutched it to my chest. I'm like, Mom. I ran up to her. I'm like, Mom, please. And she's like, I said you could get one book. And I'm like, it's a graphic novel. That counts as a book. And she's like, all right. Honestly, thank everything in the universe, my mom. She puts up with me just being a total... She doesn't put up with me. She loves the fact that I'm this hyper all the time. I was shaking. I was like, oh my God. I was so happy. Like, guys, I almost started to cry. I'm completely honest. Because I was like... Because I did start reading Silver Eyes, but it was... To be honest, it is kind of a hard book to read in my opinion because it's so full of description, which I have finished it. And I appreciate that it had so much description because because I actually took a break from FNAF for a little bit. Like I still posted comics. I took a break from it when I started college. And when I did that, I kind of put away Five Nights at Freddy's and I didn't pay that much attention to it. And now with FNAF, so when I picked up Twisted Ones, because I have actually read that book, I'm going to be reviewing that book in this upcoming year. So that book is going to be read on the book reviews soon. And so that book I will read soon. But when I picked it up, I was so nervous. I'm like, am I going to remember Silver Eyes? Am I going to remember the characters that were built up in the graphic novel and the book? And I was so nervous. But the second I opened Twisted Ones, it felt like everything came back. Like I knew everything. I knew every single little tiny detail. And I've already written the book review for Twisted Ones because I'm just so excited about it. So I'm like way ahead of time. But like looking back at it, I appreciate the descriptions because now like I know the town that they go in is called Hurricane. I know that town like the back of my hand. Like I know where the pizzeria is. I know where the pizzeria is. I know what happened to it. I know the rooms and the animatronics and the characters. I will go into all this in a hot minute. Because right now, I want to give you guys more specific details about these characters and these books. So these books were actually written by Scott. I'm going to try to say their names right. I might say them wrong. By Scott Cawthon and Kira Breed Wesley. I know I'm saying those names wrong. I'm going to put them down here. But like, they're also really, really good. The amazing art that was created for the graphic novel, I'm going to completely say their name wrong. I'm so sorry about that. Is by Claudia Schroeder. And I feel like I may have said that wrong. I'm very sorry about that. But I love her art. Her actual, the colors themselves, at least according to the inside of my book, is created by Laurie Smith, who was in charge of, coloring all these characters. And I swear, literally, these two must have worked so well together. Because when you go through the book, the colors are so vibrant. Like, certain scenes are very much you get shading and you don't get too much descriptions. But then other scenes, you get, foxy. Look at that beautiful colors and shadows and effects. It's they just worked so well together. So when you put this great, amazing group of people together, they made a fantastic graphic novel and an incredible Silver Eyes book, but not in that order. This came first, didn't it? And I'm pretty sure Scott and Kira have actually worked together on all three of the main FNAF books. I'm not sure about the upcoming ones. Actually, I have the book right here. I have the first Fazbear Frights book, and it was actually written by Scott Cawthon and Ellie Cooper. Woo! We're bumping up. We will get through this book soon. I'm spreading out the FNAF books in Books of Tea. That is the title of book review. Because I really want to make it fun. I want to read some books that aren't associated with fandom because that is a thing. But I also do want to I want to be able to read this for as long as I can. And I love the FNAF books. I have no shame about that. But yeah, honestly, guys, this was just so much fun. And now, Chris, take it away. Because yes, guys, Chris is here too. He is going to take away the explanation of the story. Chris, get started. In this story, we follow along with Charlie. Charlie is our main character, and she's essentially the one who makes this whole story happen. She returns to the town where she grew up in, which is called Hurricane, for the 10th anniversary of the 5 mysterious missing children case that happened at Fazbear's Pizzeria. Fazbear's Pizzeria is actually the place where her father worked. And her father, Henry, was actually the co-owner of the pizzeria and the co-owner of Fazbear Diner. So essentially, if y'all have played the games, you know those two names pretty well. Because the Fazbear Diner and Fazbear Pizzeria, I'm probably saying their names wrong, but both of those are featured in the games. So essentially, we do actually, in this book, there are a lot of answers that are given about the first 4 FNAF games, FNAF 1 through 4, and pieces of the other games. Not as much, but pieces. But since it is a Five Nights at Freddy's piece of merchandise, that does mean a lot of the answers are going to lead to more questions. That is something to recognize. So Charlie ends up meeting up with her old friends, and they end up going back to that pizzeria where all of this went down, and which I honestly think is very confusing. But they went back to the pizzeria, which actually had built a mall around it, and that's important for later. Just because this is a personal theory that I'm going to put out there, I'm not sure if this is true, but it's a personal theory I'm guessing at. In the upcoming FNAF game, Security Breach, doesn't it take place in a mall? And in Silver Eyes, the FNAF pizzeria has a mall built around it that wasn't completed because of bad mojo. But I don't know nothing about that. Nope, just a theory. We'll see what happens. Essentially, though, the reason why the mall wasn't completed was because of quote-unquote bad mojo. And can you really blame them? They built it around a pizzeria that that had 5 walking graves of children. So I can't really blame them for being pissed about that. But Charlie and her friends, when they go to this mall, they actually go a couple of times and go around the town, they meet up a couple of old faces. Most of the faces are welcome, but one, not so much. Can y'all guess who it is? I would recommend this book if you're a fan of the games and looking for more lore and more story, because honestly, that's just what you get with this book. And it is a lot of fun, but it is good to recognize that it is technically separate from the games, because it will answer a lot, but it will also leave you very confused. It's a big thing to recognize. And honestly, I personally, give me lore. Like, I love lore. I think it's great. Also, Charlie is a very fun character to get, because even though it's like, if you look up this book, it's designed for kids, like 9 to 12. And I'm like, geez, I would not give this to one of my nieces or nephews. Like, geez. Because essentially it has a lot of dark territory that's covered. Like, Charlie, who is the main character, her whole thing, she has grown through a lot of trauma. Spoilers for the book, as this whole episode is. She lost her twin brother to an animatronic, a yellow animatronic, although if it's a bear or a bunny, that kind of differs on her memory. She also lost her father in a suicide by animatronic, which was actually shown in one of the FNAF video games. So, that day was definitely interesting in that. So essentially, she has seen a lot of pain and she's seen a lot of hardship. So the way Charlie is kind of standoffish and not quite sure how to act around people, I can't really blame her. A big thing that runs through this book and through the next book, Twisted Ones, is that Charlie is kind of conflicted on to let the past go or to keep it close. Because essentially her past is one big mystery. So is that something you dive into or is that something you don't? And I think a big thing that definitely influenced her on this is her Aunt Jen. Aunt Jen is not a character I've referenced yet. Aunt Jen is, as far as we know, the sister of Henry. So, after because Henry ends up committing, it's a little curious about that, because Charlie believes that her father, Henry, committed suicide by building an animatronic that then killed him. Although it is possible that isn't quite what went down. But, as far as we know, that is exactly how Henry died, which is terrible and traumatic. And the way it's explained in the book through flashbacks is really heartbreaking, because it's clear that Charlie loves her father. So seeing this is very heartbreaking. But after this terrible situation happens, essentially her Aunt Jen, Charlie's Aunt Jen, swoops in, scoops up her niece, and runs away. She takes her away from Hurricane, she takes her away from that life, and she essentially wants her to leave it behind. She wants her niece to grow stronger. She wants her to leave that terrible situation behind her and just keep going. So, in a sense, is that going to help her? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. Because when you're dealing with a traumatic situation, the best thing to do is to reach out to loved ones and talk to professional help, along with bajillion other things to help people self-care and process things. In a sense, I think that's what Aunt Jen was trying to do. I'm playing devil's advocate, and I realize that because Aunt Jen, by the looks of it, she probably didn't help her actual niece that much, but I feel like she did in some way. Because Aunt Jen did just lose her brother, and as far as we know, her only brother. So that is something that's very sad to think about. And essentially, Aunt Jen was going through a lot. So even though she was especially icy, and at least from what we learned from Charlie in this book, is that she was very cold, she was deep down going through a lot of grief herself. And I think she was genuinely trying to help her niece, but I'm also... Reese tells me I should be more optimistic, so I'm trying to be more optimistic. Really, I prefer myself being a pessimist realist, but you know, whatever. Elsie is very much an optimist, which is very weird sometimes to me. So the big thing, though, with Aunt Jen is I'm actually going to dive a little bit into Twisted Ones, because I did just finish that book, which I think is fantastic. But Elsie made a list of all the books that we're covering on Books with Tea. And literally, Twisted Ones isn't until, like, January or something. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Such a good book. So I'm a little grumpy about that. But the next books we're going into are pretty cool. So I'm like, okay, I really can't complain. But I'm going to complain. Whatever. But I am going to peek a little bit in the Twisted Ones. So what I want to say in Twisted Ones, well, I'm keeping it very vague because it's a really good book. And I have that video is going to be really fucking long, so it's going to be built up from me and from Elsie. So, essentially, a thing that we learn in Twisted Ones, because Twisted Ones is, like Silver Eyes, we get flashbacks about Charlie's past. And in one of those flashbacks, we learn that her father was a cold perfectionist. And when y'all read Twisted Ones, you'll know exactly what I mean by that. But essentially, he actually would have fit... This is a very dark thought and a cold thought that I'm realizing, but also it's not wrong. Henry's philosophy lines up really closely to Alice Angel from Benny and the Ink Machine. Her philosophy, let me see if I can quote her correct. Anything less than perfect was left behind. Yeah, Henry's philosophy would be anything less than perfect should be torn apart to make something new. There's a really traumatic scene actually between Henry and his daughter where she sees that firsthand, and it's horrifying. When we get to that book, we are so deep diving into it. But I bring up that scene from a separate book because there's a slight chance, because we've never actually seen Aunt Jen and Henry interact. Maybe we'll see them interact in a flashback at some point, but for now, all we really know about Aunt Jen is from what Charlie tells us and from guessing what her brother was like. Because even if siblings don't always get along, in some ways, most likely they're going to be somehow similar to each other. So that's definitely a key thing to recognize. And if Aunt Jen is anything like her older brother, then she's a cold perfectionist, which is mildly terrifying. But I gotta admit, I think, this is just my theory, as I said earlier, I think she was genuinely trying to help her niece in the way that she knew that she could. So essentially doing what she thought was best. Not always the best decision, yeah, but honestly, it's pretty interesting. And this book just goes further and further into just craziness. And Elsie, I am going to let you go back to talking about Charlie because I know you want to continue this book, and I know you want to continue on with the description of the book. So we're going to switch over to Elsie so that way she can keep going on about the book. I'll see y'all at the next step.